Welcome back. Professor Roundtree here for Marketing 3401. We're talking about Chapter 11, Pricing Strategies. And we're talking about the price P, and we're going to focus a little bit in terms of how we have some different and unique pricing strategies when we talk about new products, kind of going back full circle to what we talked about in Chapter 8, I believe, where we talked about new product and new product development and their strategy. So, kind of think about some of the stuff we talked about for that module and kind of apply it to, the concept of pricing new products. And then we'll talk about pricing strategies for the different mix of products that companies have. And then we'll talk about some price adjustment strategies. Pricing is, in a lot of ways, very dynamic. It has to be market-driven, demand-driven. And so whenever we have a price adjustment, we have to be strategic in what and how we adjust the price. Then we'll talk about things generally related to price changes, which are a little bit more permanent. And then for a few minutes, we'll talk about some of the public policy implications of actually pricing products. Now, the first strategy is called market skimming or price skimming. The term comes from the old-fashioned way, long before I was even born, the old-fashioned way they used to make and deliver milk, where there was actually cream at the top of the milk, and you had to shake it up to mix it up. Now there's no such thing as cream in milk anymore, but cream at the top is considered to be the best part of the milk. So what they usually do is many people will actually skim it off the top because it tasted better. Anyway, that's a little bit of history here. But generally, pricing and skimming means that we try to price the product at a premium to essentially skim the market, get as much money as we can out of the marketplace. And oftentimes we get them from those people who are a lot less price sensitive, who want to be the first to market, to have the latest iPad Air as an example, or some other product that recently came out. When 3D TVs first came out, people are willing to pay the premium associated with having a three-dimensional television screen. Same thing when they first came out with plasmas. I mean, back then when they came out with plasmas, those were $10,000 to $15,000 items. Now you can get a plasma 50-inch TV for about $600. But the buyers have to want it. There has to be a group, a segment of people who don't mind paying a premium price. And then also, too, when we think about the costing, the reason why we tend to skim early on is because we're trying to, as quickly as possible, recoup the research and development costs. And essentially kind of getting to what we talked about in the previous chapter, getting to that break-even point where we can recoup all of our costs up front, and then anything after that would be pure profit. And also, too, one of the things that allows companies to price skim is the fact that typically they have a head start in terms of technology. Maybe there's some proprietary patent or trademark that allows them to charge this price. You see it a lot in pharmaceuticals. The reason why you can charge an exorbitant price for, let's say, Lipitor, which is a cholesterol-lowering drug, is before it came off a patent, they were the only ones allowed to sell that formulation. So you were able to kind of, get the highest price possible. And we see it a lot with many different types of pharmaceuticals, prescription drugs that really try to alleviate many ailments. Contrast that, market penetration pricing is where you have a low initial price to try to stimulate trial or to stimulate demand, getting the product in the hands of the people who you believe will be in your target market. Now, you'll see things like introductory price, and in some cases it might even be labeled as such on the packaging. It'll say introductory price. And you're really trying to appeal to those price-sensitive people who won't even try your product unless it is at a price that they don't believe, that they believe is fair and is not burdensome. So, and then of course the lower prices, I think the lower prices generally are a deterrent for competitors. If you're charging lower prices, what does that normally mean? Lower margins. And so lower margins, what does that mean? Generally, people don't gravitate toward that particular product category industry because it's difficult to make money at that point. Now, we're going to talk about 5 different types of product mix pricing strategies, and we'll kind of take them one at a time. So generally, a product line pricing, it kind of takes into account that there are some differences in terms of products across different lines. And there should be some nuance or difference across the different products that you have within the line that you're actually selling. So you'll get this a lot in certain types of categories where we're talking about, let's say for example, skis. If you ever purchase skis, one of the things that you'll find is that there's a wide range of uh, pricing in terms of ski products, mainly related or connected more so to the expertise in using it. Same thing for tennis rackets. So you typically will have an introductory tennis racket or an introductory set of skis to appeal to those folks who are curious about learning the sport, but they don't want to invest an awful lot of money. And then it runs all the way the range up to the folks who do it professionally, who are willing to pay thousands of dollars. You see that also too with bicycles. Entry level, usually you hear words like entry level, and then you have something in the mid range, and then you have what they might call oftentimes the Pro Series, something along those lines. Optional product pricing, it takes into account some of the options and accessories that you might see with a main product. You see this a lot in SLR cameras, for example. If you've ever had an SLR camera where you can change out the different lenses with the standard body, you can get all sorts of lenses. You get telephoto lenses, wide angle lenses, all different qualities, all different ranges. You can get a multi-purpose lens. And so if you buy a Nikon camera or you buy a Canon camera, you buy the base body for it. And then they make their money oftentimes on all the accessories that go with it, which includes the various types of lenses that they offer. Captive pricing is a very common one that we see, especially in the entertainment industry. Think about every time you've ever gone to a sporting event, and think about the prices that you see for popcorn, soda, beer. And they call it captive pricing because we are, and in many ways, held captive by the situation we put ourselves in. In other words, we can't go anywhere else to buy that beer or that soda. And so if we go into the arena, we're going to have to buy it at that price. Same thing that we will see at the airport. Think about the last time you purchased a bottle of water when you went through security, because obviously they confiscate our water these days. Think about the bottle of water and how much that costs relative to what you would pay if you went to a 7-Eleven outside the airport. Captive pricing essentially just means that the pricing is going to be at the level that's consistent with the fact that we do not have many options other than to maybe sneak it into the movie. Movie theaters are the same way too when it comes to selling concessions, hot dogs, popcorn. All those are captive priced kinds of products. Excuse me. Byproducts pricing, that really refers to all the different things that they price. Just take a cow, for example, and think about all the different cuts of meat that you have with a cow. You have at the very end filet mignon, and then you have some stuff that many people may not even eat. It may be cow's hooves or the feet, basically. And so they have various cuts of meat. You have it for chicken, you have it for beef, and you have it for pig. You probably have more different cuts in cows because they're larger. Chickens, and there are many parts of the world where they would eat parts of chicken that we won't even eat. But anyway, the whole byproduct thing is really about trying to squeeze every last drop out of what I would consider the raw materials. We see this a lot too in the oil industry. And so think about all the uses for crude oil. Heating oil for the home, gasoline for our cars, kerosene for certain types of lamps, oil-based types of byproducts are used to make plastic. All of that is using crude oil, and what it's doing is it's taking all the different byproducts from crude oil and using it to make many other different types of products as an added ingredient. When we price bundle in terms of prices, we're really trying to get people to buy more of the product that we're selling. You see it in cable and as well as satellite dishes. You're going to bundle together HBO, Showtime, and Cinemax as an example. And so you get multiple things at the same time hopefully you'll get people to buy all three of those networks that I just mentioned. Many people will not want to buy Cinemax potentially by itself. But if you do it as an add-on for an extra $3 a month, for some people that kind of makes sense. Now, when it comes to adjusting prices, we're going to talk about 7 different ways that we can actually adjust prices, and we'll kind of take them one at a time. The first one is going to be the traditional one I think most of us are familiar with, which is more discount and allowance type of pricing. There are many gas stations that have different prices for paying cash versus paying with credit. And so that's an example of having different pricing for different products. And so when we think about discounts and allowances, we kind of reward people for certain kinds of behavior, maybe paying early, paying with cash, which basically means for a retailer, you don't have to pay a percentage of your revenue to MasterCard, Visa, American Express, or some of the others. So again, looking at different ways, you may give discounts to people who pay their bills on time. You especially see that in business to business kinds of relationships where they give incentive to suppliers. Will say, if you pay us for Federal Express might do this as well. You pay your bill on time or you pay it early, you'll get a discount. But like Office Depot and companies that sell office supplies, they'll give you a better deal if you settle your bill at the end of the month within 10 days after the bill is actually sent out. Segmenting strategy, we see this a lot in airlines and in movie theaters. Movie theaters, think about it, the last time you went to a matinee, because the price is different, a lot of times they do price them differently to appeal to people who are a little bit more price sensitive. So you might find that some senior citizens might want to come to a matinee, and there might be a standard price for anybody walking through the door during a matinee. It might be a common time where seniors might actually go to a movie theater. But they also might have a senior discount. Go into McDonald's, if you're a senior, they'll give you a senior discount where you, I think, pay something along the lines of maybe 75% of the price of maybe what a cup of coffee might be. Same size, different price. But the objective is to have a different pricing strategy for different segments. But you have to make sure that you're not engaging in what we call price discrimination, and we'll kind of get to that when we talk about it at the end in terms of regulatory stuff. So we'll talk a few minutes here again after this about some of the ways that you can have effective segmentation strategy. But to have effective segmentation strategy, you have to be able to recognize whether or not a market is segmentable. Movie theaters, movies, that is definitely segmentable. You can segment it based on the content. So certain movies, young teenagers will go and watch compared to, let's say, senior citizens. That will help it out. But you may have some movies that are very popular. Some of the movies these days that are based on the old comic books, the old Marvel comic books, Thor, Spider-Man, any of the X-Men, those kinds of things. And so you'll have a wide range of people who are interested. But you may want to separate out those people who watch that movie because the experience might be different for somebody who's an adult or a senior citizen compared to 20 kids coming in who go to the same high school. Nothing wrong with 20 kids coming from the same high school, but it might be a different experience for somebody who's 40 years old there, maybe with their wife or husband. So you got to make sure that it's legal if you're going to actually do that. Again, the price discrimination thing is something you want to make sure you shy away from. And also too, we want to make sure that the prices that we do use for different segments hopefully maximizes revenue. So we don't want to give things away if there is no noticeable or important difference across different segments. So if they are segmentable and you believe that, for example, a particular product will make sense to price it for one segment to stimulate demand compared to another, definitely do it. If it alienates people, that creates problems. You see it in the airline industry too. I mean, they even have some proposals on the table for certain airlines where they want to have different prices for people who have different large body types and how much they weigh, based on the fact that they may take up more physical space, and some people have a problem with that. But the traditional one that we always see is more the coach, business class, and first class, and each one is priced differently. You get some basic amenities that might be different in terms of food. You might get some drinks, wider seats, that kind of stuff. But by and large, we all get to the same destination at the same time, regardless of whether or not you sit in coach, first class, or business class. Psychological pricing is one that has been studied a lot by academics, and they kind of look at it in terms of how people perceive pricing. And so, for example, one of the more common ones is reference pricing. Most of us, when we think about products that we know and we're looking to buy it, we have some sort of reference price. And all a reference price really means is that you have some data stored in your mind in terms of what you believe a price for a product should be. If you drive to work on a daily basis, you probably have an idea in terms of what the range is for gasoline with the grade that you usually purchase. And so when you see something that is above or below what we call your reference price, which is just an accumulation of information that you know about pricing for a particular product or service, we start making some judgments or analyses in our minds. So for example, if we know that 87 octane gasoline on average right now might be somewhere around, let's say, $3.40 for argument's sake. And then we run into a gas station and we see it's there for $2.10. We would probably discount that meaning we won't even look at that seriously, because we would probably say, oh, that's a typo. There's no way that's right. Or if it's $6, you say that's not right either. Most of the time, those extremes do not update your reference price. You contrast that, as they would say. You just push it away and say, that's just an abnormality, typo, misprint, what have you. But if we continue to see, we think it's 340, next day we see it's 345, 344, 348. Eventually, our reference price will be updated based on the additional data points of information that we're seeing. Again, just a concept that we see. And the importance of reference pricing is when you put a price out there for a product, know good and well that consumers are very smart and knowledgeable. And so you just can't pull one over on them. And so for them, sometimes they won't even take you seriously if your pricing is totally out of whack when it comes to what's actually out in the marketplace. Promotional pricing, I think that's probably the most common one as consumers that we're familiar with. We'll take them here. I mean, generally speaking, they're usually things that we do for a relatively short period of time to stimulate demand now. So, for example, coupons, loss leaders. And loss leaders are the ones that are very popular during Black Friday, right after Thanksgiving. Every retail store has a list of items that they're basically selling either at a loss or a complete break even. They're not making any profit on those items sold. But the objective is to drive traffic to the store and get us to buy all sorts of other great stuff at regular margins. We might have a special event type of pricing, potentially. So for example, any kind of sale day that we might see. It could be after Thanksgiving sale, which is the Black Friday one. It may be Veterans Day. It may be President's Day. There may be a Valentine's Day special at the florist. All those are special events. Cash rebates. Cash rebates are really good. I think the internet and technology has made that better. It used to be a time when you had to fill out a form physically by hand and actually mail it. And in many cases, you had to actually get it notarized, making sure that it adheres to whatever the date restrictions are. These days, you go online and you pretty much redeem the rebate right there. They'll send you cash or check in the mail. Or if you have any type of store card, they might actually give you some credit there. A little bit easier now. Low interest financing is something that we see a lot with durable goods. So we'll see it when you buy a washer and dryer, you buy a new car, anything that costs a significant amount of money where the average person would not pay cash. They give you low finance rates. So, for example, they might say something along the lines of, if you buy this particular product at this particular price, we will give you low interest financing as long as you pay it off in full within the next 24 months. Sears is always great for that. You may also get extended warranties for free. You see this at Costco a lot. They do a really nice job when you buy electronics. At a bare minimum, they will extend your warranty beyond the manufacturer's warranty. And then you can also buy some upgrades as well. But one of the things that you feel comfortable with when you do purchase at Walmart for an electronic piece, rather than 90 days that most companies will give you, they will extend it to 1 full year. So a lot of people oftentimes will buy their TVs from there because they know they're getting the extra benefit without paying extra by buying their product from Costco. And you might also get free maintenance. You see this a lot. I think BMW has been running this for the longest time. Other than something catastrophic, maintenance is free for the first 3 years when you buy a BMW car. There are, however, some risks of doing any kind of promotions, and I think the big one is that we have a lot of people who are deal prone, people who get addicted to these deals, and they wait around for the next latest and greatest price promotion to come around. I'll admit I'm that way when it comes to, for example, Coke and Pepsi and soft drinks. I know I don't have an allegiance or loyalty to one brand or the other, so I continue to wait to see what's on sale. Won't buy it normal price because I know if it's not on sale today, next weekend, one of them will be on sale. And it also creates price wars. And for a customer, that's okay. That's a good thing. It's just that from a marketer standpoint, it can be very difficult because all you're doing as individual companies competing with one another is continuing to reduce the margins to the point where nobody can make any money in a particular category. Now, the next few that we're going to talk about are related to geographic pricing. A lot of these are really more so for business to business kinds of relationships. It doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't come into play with consumers, but you do see it a lot when it comes to business to business buying and selling. Free on board, it's a common concept that's used. Essentially, you'll find it where they have these things called common carriers. The goods are delivered, and basically the person who is actually buying it takes responsibility, for example, for it being broken or mishandled very early on in the delivery process. So it's not like you're basically home free if you're the buyer when it's actually delivered to your loading dock. Many times it might be, as long as it's actually put on the ship or the container, you take ownership of it right then. And you may not get possession of it for another 30, 60, 90 days. Of course, that is a big risk, and a lot of times, though, too, it's at a cost, to a cost discount for you. So you get a benefit from it, but you assume some additional risk. Now, the uniform delivery pricing, companies charge the same price plus some kind of freight for all customers regardless. So it's not price discriminatory, kind of like the opposite. You do have some choice in FOB, but by and large, what they're saying is it's just a cost plus markup when it comes to delivery, and there's no discrimination across different kinds of customers. Again, these are primarily more for business to business kinds of relationships. They also may price differently based on zoning, and that could be based on where you're physically having it delivered. So, for example, trying to make a delivery to a densely populated urban area just might be more expensive. Or if you live so far away from the point where the warehouse houses the unit, they may charge you based on where you actually live. So it could be physical geographic distance. It could be the logistical differences in trying to deliver to a rural versus an urban area. It could be something really simple if we're talking about a consumer type of context, where they charge you additionally because people have to walk up several flights of stairs and there's no elevator in the building. So that's the different kinds that you might see. The next one here, next to last one here, where we're talking about more basing point pricing, um, basically what they're doing is they're trying to appear as if the actual delivery charges are consistent. So basically what they would do is they'd say, okay, we're going to have a base city, and the base city might be somewhere in the middle of the country. And so what they do is they say, regardless of where you have to have it delivered, we're going to charge everybody the same price. Now, that works well when you're having it delivered to LA or New York. But if you have it delivered within Chicago and it may only take an hour to get there, it's more of a flat rate delivery that they might have as a price point for the products that they're shipping. Excuse me. The next one here is what we call freight absorption. Essentially, in a very competitive market, what we have oftentimes too is that as a seller, you really have to be competitive, and you might say delivery is free. We see this a lot in consumer types of things online. Everybody has a promotion where all deliveries are free. There's no charge for deliveries. You kind of absorb that as a cost of doing business. In a business-to-business context, where we're talking about oftentimes tens of thousands of dollars, having a seller absorb the cost might be a huge difference between choosing an option from seller A versus seller B. Dynamic pricing, we're seeing that a lot now, especially with the internet and some of the auction sites, the ability to have real-time adjustments to pricing based on demand from potential buyers. And so you'll see this when it comes to certain commodities. So if you're trying to buy fuel for your jets, if you're Southwest or some of the others, you'll have real-time bidding systems where people can actually go ahead and bid. And it's a dynamic process where the price that you pay is truly reflective of the competitive nature to acquire whatever the product might be. And so supply truly, in terms of the pricing, demand will dictate the price you ultimately pay. If nobody else is looking to buy it, you might get a great deal. If it's a hot commodity and everybody else wants to have some of it, it's going to cost you more to actually do that. So, but it's the technology that's available, especially internet, that allows a lot of this stuff to happen. Internationally, I mean, obviously when you have any kind of product, creating a pricing strategy across multiple countries, requires us to kind of really take a look at what are some of the dynamics that might be going on from country to country that might have an impact on us charging a certain price and also being able to get that price that we choose. Different economic conditions across the world will have an impact on our cost structure, our ability to actually deliver the physical product. The cost of that might be a little bit different. The competition, if you decide that you want to sell your product in Japan, especially if it's electronics, very different if you're trying to sell electronics. If you're a manufacturer, let's say here in the United States, very different compared to selling it here on our shores. There are different laws and regulations as it relates to what you can and cannot do in terms of pricing. In the United States, you're not supposed to price fix. You're not supposed to give people additional benefits without really offering it to others unless it's more on a competitive kind of basis. You can't be given money, as they say, underneath the table to keep a price at a certain level. So, but different countries have different laws and regulations. Infrastructure-wise, manufacturing, let's say here in the United States, very different issue in trying to sell something overseas in other parts of the world like Europe or Australia. You have to understand what infrastructure exists there and how that has an impact on your cost structure that will enable you to determine what exactly you're going to charge for your product or service. And then also too, you have to think about what's going on from a marketing standpoint. In certain cultures, you have to figure out what the relative importance price is compared to all the other marketing mix elements, and really what your objective is. So you might have a product that you have been selling in the US for the last 5 years, and you may have a different pricing strategy here, but you're trying to get into the market in Europe as an example. So you might have to do more of a penetration pricing kind of strategy just to make sure you get people to try what it is that you're actually selling. So anytime we make any price changes, we cut prices. We could do price cuts for a variety of reasons. It might be we have excess inventory. Keep in mind, every time you have a warehouse full of stuff, it just costs you money. It costs money to keep things warm. If it's perishable, you got to keep them cold to make sure that they don't wilt or just perish or go stale. And so you have to understand if there is excess capacity, it might make sense just to kind of take a markdown on that. You see it a lot in traditional stores. I mean, that's why you see regular stores that consumer shop in. You see certain types of produce, bread are marked down, flowers if they're about to wilt. Any retailer would much rather get 50 cents on the dollar than to get zero and not make any money off of it. When we increase prices, however, I'll find one more other point too in terms of the price cuts. Sometimes the price cuts might be there just to increase market share in the short term. And if it's not part of an overall strategy, if you're just changing prices, you have to say, how does this fit into a possible repositioning of our brand? And in terms of increasing prices, it might be because of inflation. It might be because you have increased demand, which allows you to charge the higher prices in that auction scenario I talked about a few minutes ago. Maybe you just have a lack of supply. Beanie Babies. Ty Warner sold billions of dollars worth of Beanie Babies. And what he decided to do was to artificially create a lack of supply by shutting down production and holding back on the supply in the marketplace to build up demand for his Beanie Baby products. And he did a masterful job, actually. He became a billionaire doing it by essentially artificially managing price through keeping supply down artificially. Don't produce as many, and then doing what you can from a marketing standpoint to spur and increase demand. So what happens when demand goes up and you keep supply suppressed? Prices go up. All right. So we increase prices in terms of buyers' reaction. I mean, typically when we increase prices, a lot of times companies will be perceived as greedy. They're just jacking up the prices because they know they can get it. But a lot of times you get this fever from customers who go, wow, the price is going up. Man, that must be really popular. So I think it's kind of hot product I want to have. You see that frenzy when it comes to new technology products, where people just say it's a must-have thing. And it doesn't matter what the price is because it's something everybody else wants, they have to have it. Price cuts, most consumers kind of say, okay, if the price is coming down, you see it in automobiles. Traditionally, the new automobile season comes out, for example, around Thanksgiving time for the following year. And so if you can get a current year model that you're buying toward the end of the year, you can usually get a pretty good deal because you're just marking down inventory. Also, too, I mean, it may be because models just aren't selling well. You also get it when you have some quality issues. I mean, traditionally in a consumer sense, we see this with markdowns where people say, oh, it's a slight defect. It's not going to hamper or impact anything that we're going to do with it. Let's just pay the cheaper price. Or items that might have been returned. Even though the quality is good, the perception is if somebody else took it home, the quality is not as good and you don't want to pay full retail price on those kinds of items. So some price questions. What happens when prices are changed? Then you have to ask yourselves questions as marketers. You'd ask the question: why did the competitors change the price? Is there something about the dynamic of the marketplace that we're not seeing that they know about? In other words, what do they know that we don't know that allowed them to change the price? Is it temporary or permanent? They just may be getting to the point where they may have had excess inventory, like we talked about a few minutes ago, and they're reducing prices. Or there may be a fundamental shift in people's demand for the underlying benefits. Maybe we just don't know about it yet. So again, going back to environmental scanning, seeing exactly what's going on with your competitors can give you an idea in terms of where you need to be with the price P and all the other P's as well. And then again, once you make a price change, the question is, what will your competitors do? Remember, of all the strategies with the P's, price changes are the easiest ones to do. Typically, it's a couple of keystrokes on the computer with all the barcoding stuff that's going on today in retail, as an example. You don't have to do a whole lot. And so just remember, whatever strategy you have in pricing, easy, very easy to replicate. So what are some of the solutions? You can actually match them. Depending on the competitive environment, you don't want to get into a price war with a Walmart. You just can't win a price war with them. You can maintain the price and kind of communicate it as you're getting more for what you're paying. And so trying to reposition in the consumer's minds that you are a premium brand, again, takes creativity. You have the promotions P, communications P, working in concert with the pricing strategy. You can do something to improve the quality if you increase the price. Sometimes that might be something very simple like adding an active ingredient, putting something on the labeling that says new and improved, something that communicates that they're getting more to justify the higher price. Or you just might launch a lower price kind of brand. We see this in many categories. Think about the product life cycle that we talked about, where people just realize that their product cannot be a premium-based product any longer. Pierre Cardin is a brand that was around for a while, back in the 80s, very competitive with the likes of Calvin Klein and some of the others at the time. They just gave up on the premium market. And so now they're considered to be more of a low-end brand where you can get their products, Burlington Coat Factory, you can buy their cologne in Walgreens, and they kind of reposition themselves as sort of like an everyday kind of brand versus a premium brand, as they say, in fine stores near you. They're no longer in fine stores. A couple more, then we'll wrap this up here. This is sort of a table that kind of talks about generally how would you respond. So for example, real quickly, I'm not going to spend the time going through each one. Take a look at it. It's a flow diagram. So if have competitors actually cut prices? So if no, we might want to hold our prices. So if we can't justify a higher price, it might not behoove us to increase the price because we have to then explain to the customer what else are they getting if everybody else is holding prices constant. Also, too, we don't want to lower the price either because they might think that the quality that we're putting out there is not as good. But let's say they did increase the prices. Will it have an impact on their market share? Do you want to go ahead and try and meet their lower prices? Again, you're not going to win that kind of war with Walmart. So maybe the action should be hold the line and see exactly what's going to go on in the marketplace in response to a change in their pricing. Maybe you might find that it's just their particular brand and you can hold your price constant. Or maybe it's just that particular brand is sort of an indicator, an early indicator of what consumers might think about the category, and you will eventually have to lower your price. Anyway, make sure to take a look at this, look through the flow of the diagram. I think it's very interesting, but it's really more how you can strategically respond to different pricing strategies from your competitors. Now, from a public policy standpoint, we want to make sure that we're not in any way, first of all, breaking any laws related to pricing. We don't want to be accused of price fixing, which basically means, or collusion, where we're getting together with other competitors in the marketplace and keeping prices usually artificially high. Okay, not a real good thing. So we want it to be truly competitive. And so I know sometimes it might seem that in certain categories, and you could probably argue for a long time in the computer industry, computers were artificially high. They just seemed high. And so there was really, because keep in mind, once we talk about competition, what should happen? Prices should come down. But if we have intense competition in a particular industry and prices keep towing the line or they're raised, it raises an eyebrow with regulators. So price fixing is something people want to generally stay away from. Predatory pricing, typically you see that when it comes to, again, we talked about loss leader, but if we're keeping prices artificially low, for example, Walmart could weather a storm like that. And people have argued that they do that to put the small mom and pop stores out of business, the small stores that service general merchandisers, or for Home Depot as an example, trying to put out of business the small hardware stores, where basically they would go in. They don't do this, but they could go in and keep prices artificially low, and their competitors cannot match that low price small mom and pop kind of hardware store. they can't match those prices. And so what eventually happens is, and if they do, they will have too low margins to keep in business. And if they don't, what's going to probably happen is that the demand for their products will go down because they'll just go down the road to Home Depot to buy it. So again, regulatory issues, very important, especially in the pricing domain. The Robinson-Patman Act, again, this is more of a legal kind of term. That it's actually a law that really enforces the whole price discrimination thing, where it comes to selling the exact same product for different prices for different groups, for the purpose of really giving the benefit to one segment, one group, or another. And so we're really calling it more of the unfair kind of pricing. And you see that many times when you look at the different kinds of pricing that you have, urban areas versus rural areas. And sometimes the pricing in very poor areas across the board for products tend to be a lot higher. The argument that you get from retailers oftentimes will be the cost of insurance or security trickles down into the cost structure. That's why a box of Cheerios might cost $6 in certain sections of New York City. But you go to Walmart in a rural area, it might be like maybe $3.50 or even less. Last couple of points here that I want to make with relationship to pricing in the channel. The whole notion of price maintenance, it's when a manufacturer requires a dealer to charge a specific retail price for its product. Generally, you see the word suggested retail price. I would challenge you to go into a Walmart and find any product where they actually charge the full suggested retail price. You just don't see it. And that's because competition generally takes care of that. And so if you can manage your cost structure effectively in all the other areas, or maybe buy in bulk, which is what Walmart does, which allows them then to charge below suggested retail price, the laws say that you really should not be doing this. One of the reasons why many of the small mom and pops do go out of business is because Walmart is allowed to do this. So the last one is more deceptive pricing. You may have heard something along the lines of bait and switch, where you see a price in the paper and you go to the store and they have had one item for that price, but you'd have to buy it at the regular price or something comparable. So they do have laws and regulations from state to state that really talk to or speak to this issue of bait and switch, where you have to have a certain number of these items on sale for a certain period of time to allow people time to read the ad in the newspaper, take a drive over there. What they were finding is that since they had one item, by the time somebody got the morning paper, went to the store to buy it, naturally, if they only had two of them, they were already gone. Also, too, you want to make sure that there is some consistency with the prices on the shelves compared to what is actually rung up at the scanner. Many people, when they're checking out, unless they're doing self-checkout, don't even take a look at the scanner. They might be busy packing their own bags, and you never know what's actually being rung up on the machine based on that barcode scan. And also, you want to make sure there's no confusion. You want to make sure that consumers know what they're really paying. This is especially true when we're talking about people signing some kind of agreement to borrow money to make a purchase, like for a washer and dryer or a car. You want to make sure it's spelled out to them, not only how much they're paying in terms of the price, but how much it costs them in finance charges, because that'll tell you the true price that you're paying. So they talk about it in the context of truth in lending. Anyway, so that wraps up pricing strategies. And on the other side, we will start our discussion on channels of distribution. And I'll see you on the next side.
That was easy.